Hi, and thanks for watching the RPG channel. Whenever I first got my Xbox 360, I resolved myself to try different types of games than I normally played, which consisted mostly of fighting games and third-person action-type games. And one genre that I've always stayed away from is the first-person shooter genre. I tended to view that more of a design default more than an actual genre, but I was determined to try new things, and then I heard about this game, which is Call of Juarez, and it is a Western-themed first-person shooter, and since I'm fond of Westerns, I decided this would be a good entryway into that particular genre for me. The first character that you get to play as in Call of Juarez is this guy here, Billy Candlestick. And even though this is a first-person shooter game, Billy's storyline is, or at least his gameplay, is more based on stealth and moving around without being seen, that kind of thing. And a lot of people, or at least vocal ones on the internet, had trouble with this aspect of the game, because it can be rather frustrating sometimes. And I don't really think that the first-person genre is all that suited for platforming. That's how you jump. And also, this game suffers from some of the worst 3D models that I've really seen. But all that aside, the gameplay is pretty fun, even with Billy here, and later on he gets a whip that he can use to climb over obstacles, and he uses a bow and arrow that he can use to kill enemies without being noticed. At least that's the idea. The other guy you get to play as in Call of Juarez is Billy's Uncle Ray, or Reverend Ray, who is this guy here, and he is a fire and brimstone style preacher who apparently had a rather shady past and was something of a gunslinger, or at least so we're led to believe. And his missions are much more straightforward and involve going in places and shooting people. The gameplay mechanics are not exactly perfect, and there are a few things I noticed, not even being a fan of the genre, but what really set this game apart for me at least was the story, which is one of the best ones that I've seen in a video game of any genre. And the reason I say that is because in this game, Reverend Ray and Billy aren't some like pistol-wielding co-op team, but are in fact mortal enemies. Reverend Ray believes that Billy has committed a crime and is chasing him all over the West trying to kill him. And on the Billy levels, your main objective is usually getting away from Reverend Ray, while then you'll play a Ray level, well, where you're going through the setting, trying to catch Billy. And through this, they, as a pair, get into a large number of shenanigans, and other characters get brought in. An overarching theme in the game is the legendary Call of Juarez, which is this Aztec treasure, which is apparently buried outside the border town. So while the gameplay is far from perfect, the story more than made up for that, and I found myself getting more interested in these characters than in other video game characters. Okay, now we have Call of Juarez Bound in Blood, which is a prequel to the other game. And in this game you get to play as Reverend Ray when he was in his gunslinger phase, along with his two brothers, Thomas and William, one of which you met in the earlier game and another who was mentioned. Unlike the earlier game, in this one the two main characters that you can play as, Thomas and Ray, are not chasing each other, but are working together through most of the game, and they each have their own stats and abilities, and own preferences in guns. Now, while they do work together in theory, the tone of the game increasingly is that they're going to try to shoot each other at about any moment. So, while they are technically a team, there is a great deal of tension between them, and it really helps the story of the game. Ray is back from the first game, this being back whenever he was in his gunslinger days, so he's a little bit more quick and agile in this one, but is still just as deadly. His preference is these two pistols which he uses, and he's a bit tougher than his brother Thomas and can take more damage. The other character in the game is Thomas, and he's more of a tactical fighter than Ray. He's not nearly as stealth-based as Billy was in the first game, but he still can use a bow and arrow. He has a lasso, which he can use to climb over things, and also some throwing knives, which he can use to silently dispatch enemies from a distance. But his primary weapon is this rifle, and he's a bit more accurate with it than Ray is with his pistols, but doesn't have nearly the same rate of fire and can't take as much damage. So, all in all, it's a pretty good combination of abilities that you have to choose from. The storyline in this game is just as good as it was in the first game, except substantially different just because of the different characters and stuff going on. The two characters that you can play as in this game, Ray and Thomas, are not really video game heroes in any sense of the word. They're not even really anti-heroes. They, for however you want to spin it, they're outlaws who are some actually pretty despicable people running around out in the West doing horrible things to anyone who gets in their way. And this works in this game because it's not impossible to understand why they're doing the things they're doing. And you can still sort of empathize with them and understand their motivations, even if you don't necessarily agree with shooting up an entire town full of people. And as the game goes on, this gets harder and harder to do as the two brothers slip further and further into lawlessness, and I think that was kind of the point. While I love the story mode in Call of Juarez Bound in Blood, the multiplayer is also extraordinarily good, and I'm not big on online playing, but this game has seriously sold me on the concept. In Call of Juarez Bound in Blood, online you can play a variety of different game modes, which run everything from team-based mission objectives to just killing everyone who's not you. And you can do this by using a variety of different classes, each with their own special abilities, weapons, and playstyles, which make for a very diverse playfield, and there's a lot of fun you can have. So this has been the Call of Juarez games, and I have had a lot of fun with this series. It's probably been one of the best game experiences I've had on the Xbox 360. And I would strongly recommend this game to anyone who's at all interested in westerns or first-person shooters. The first game has its faults and might not be for everyone. The second game fixes almost all of those problems and is all in all an outstanding gameplay experience. This has been James with the RPG channel, and I will talk to you later.